there are so many different paths to what you're trying to accomplish. There is not one way up the mountain. Sometimes people are going to take the scenic route and it takes longer. Sometimes people are more aggressive and they're going to climb the rocks that are deadly, right? And sometimes a rainstorm's going to come up and you have to wait a week before you can keep climbing again. But so often we think that just because this person went up that trail, that's the only way I can get up there. And when it's no longer available to us for a multitude of reasons, that's when we shut down and we feel like success at the top is never going to happen. So the people that I learn from echo this sentiment all the time. And I love people whose journeys have taken 20, 30 years because that's the most impressive to me. And it's through those inspirational stories that we realize that, like, one, it's never too late. And two, there's a million different ways to get what you want to get. And we land right where we started, which is you just have to get out there and start testing. And don't marry yourself to one track. If you want to be an author and you don't get a book agent, you just give up? Or do you tell the story that you want to put out in the world, that your heart is dying to tell the world, and then throw it on your back and carry it up the mountain yourself? That's up to you, folks. That's up to you. But that's what makes the difference in someone who makes it up there and someone who doesn't.
Today, we have someone who's been captivating audiences with his powerful storytelling for years. Rain Bennett is a documentary filmmaker, writer, and now a coach who helps people harness the magic of stories to connect, inspire, and create positive change. So, Rain, let's get into it. What drew you to get into these themes?
Well, my profession has always been storytelling. My background is in filmmaking, specifically documentary filmmaking. Now I'm starting to do more narrative or fictional stories. But for 20 years, I've done documentaries. And if I track it back, I always wanted to be a writer. I would write stories when I was really young. And because I was an athlete, I kind of got away from that when I was teenager and that sort of age. Other things that, took me away from that passion, that hobby. But then when I was in university, I started studying filmmaking and started training under documentary filmmakers. So, I didn't really think it was storytelling. I didn't really help people with storytelling until after I completed my first feature documentary that was self-funded. I shot it myself, went around the world telling this story, which was a very hard task. And when I got done with that, which was about a 5-year journey.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was exhausting. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do it in the same way again, because I really had to make every step happen. And, with filmmaking or any kind of project-based career, it's like ebbs and flows, of money, basically, of projects. So it's not consistent. It's not a 9 to 5, as we call it. So in between those creative projects or client projects, I was thinking, okay, what can I do? What skills do I have that I can monetize in between the bigger projects like that? Well, this was when I sold that film. It was 2016, 2017. And now social media is everywhere at that point. And all of these brands are being challenged with having to market with social media.
Yeah.
But if you're the inventor of a new pen, doesn't necessarily mean that you're a writer or a filmmaker or an artist, or you know how to market that. But because everybody has access to social media, everyone has to elevate their marketing game. So those people became my clients because my philosophy that I had developed in making that film was, it's not about the budget. It's not about the production value. It's not about the technical skill. It's about this, right? It's about the heart and communicating to other people. And if you have that part down, all the details and the technical production value, etc., aren't as important. I'm not saying they're not important, but so many people look for the right camera or the right hashtag or the right trend to follow, and they don't focus on the message, the substance. All great stories are about the emotional journey at the core of the story. They're not about dinosaurs or robots or all the plot of the story. They're about the heart, the transformation that people go through.
Yeah, the
And
essence gets in the shadows, stays in the shadows.
Right. And so it's the same thing with social media. And so that's when I started doing public speaking. I wrote a book, keynotes and workshops and things like that. And then I started creating my own social media, which was a little bit about filmmaking, but a lot more about storytelling on stage, storytelling in a book, storytelling on social media, etc.
Your hands will be on the wheel. You decide how long this podcast will be, but
4 hours.
Yeah, it's just too much to talk about when it's about storytelling. Rain, let's say I have a client that owns a pet shop.
Okay.
And they just are under a lot of pressure because of what you and everybody else knows. They need to up their game, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a very good story to tell, but they can't do it, though they are in Latin America. So it's not a pricey, high-value account. It's just a regular entrepreneur that wants to tell the story. Do you have something for that kind of account?
Yes. I want to ask a question first. You said they have a really great story to tell. How do you know?
Well, because it's our client. And because we are into storytelling also. We develop IPs for TV series, and we also develop books for children.
Got it.
We know some of it.
So what's the takeaway? Like, what's the story that they have to tell that's so powerful?
Well, it's care. It's about purpose and it's about responsibility once you have a pet, because most of the people, they have a pet, but they don't take care of their pet. They don't love their pet. They just see it as an object that it's inside the house and it's disposable, even if they move or if they go on vacations. They don't love their pets. Mm-hmm. So it's about responsibility and purpose in the field of pet taking care of.
Okay. So would you say that they are also trying to educate their customer about these things?
Yeah.
Okay. So at the end of the day, it's not really about the company and what they do. I mean, it is about what they do well, but they can't just say, hey, we're really great at this. Come spend your money with us. It's about the customer. It's about who, if you're a stand-up comedian, it's about the audience. You can't say you're funny. The audience tells you you're funny.
Yeah.
You can't say 100 people out in the audience not laughing, like, y'all are wrong. I am funny, right? It doesn't work that way. It's the same thing with this type of communication. You can't tell them, your audience, that they should care about what you have to say. You have to find the way that they want to hear it, right? So what are they struggling with? If they don't care about their pets, first of all, I would want to understand why they don't care about their pets. Or if it's because, now you're getting to it, is it because you're a single mother and you're working 2 jobs and you got a pet for your kid to try to keep them company, so you don't have time? If that's it, that's the way we enter time. We're going to help you save time if you shop with us. We're going to teach you simple things you can do at the beginning of your pet raising that will make everything else easier and save you time, right? Is it money, right? Is saving them money in the long run going to be what entices them? At the end of the day, all communication, when you're, especially for marketing, or specifically for marketing, is if you are bringing a value or a promise to them, like, I'm going to make this better for you, or I'm going to make you better at this, or you're alleviating a problem that they have. I'm going to help you get out of debt. I'm going to stop this from happening to you. So it's either a promise that you're offering them or a problem that you're solving for them, right? It's not about your cool stuff. We have really great dog leashes and we love our dogs. Nobody cares. That doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter, but all pet stores should care about the, I mean, that's the lowest lift, right? Like that is the bare minimum of responsibility, is that you care, or you're high quality, or you know what I mean? You hear these things all the time. Like, we have a purpose. Doesn't everyone? Right? Even if that purpose is to make money, like that doesn't mean anything. So you have to talk to the people in the way that they want to hear it. And you have to clearly identify who your customer is. So if I go to one room and I'm a comedian again, right? And those people don't laugh, it doesn't just mean that I'm not funny and I'll never be funny, because I might be able to try those jokes in another room and it work. So now I know a little bit of something about my ideal audience. So I'm like, oh, I don't need to be talking to old ladies from the corporate space, right? I need to be talking to drunk 25-year-old guys, right? Who like, because I do, fart jokes, right? Like, so you have to understand. Yeah, you have to understand like who you're trying to serve, and you really have to understand what they need. And a lot of that is just being in the game and testing. But I had someone reach out to me the other day, and I haven't communicated with her about this yet. I made a TikTok video, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I have an Indian baking company, like a cookie company, with all these different flavors." She listed off all the different flavors, and I want to talk with her. I want to just get on a live and help her workshop through it, because what I wanted to say was, but I want to do it carefully so I'm helpful and not just like being rude, because what I wanted to say was like, listing off all those flavors, okay, you might catch somebody because they're like, oh, that's a unique flavor, but that really doesn't do anything. That doesn't make me want to shop at your store because you just listed off 12 flavors. There has to be something more for me to decide to go here instead of there. For some people, it's price. We have the cheapest cookies on the block. For some people, it's quality. You will not taste a better cookie in this town, and you'll pay a premium for it, but you won't taste a better cookie. Those are two different markets, that two different audiences that you're targeting. So there's a lot at play here, but it's all about interpersonal relationships. It's all about, and that's what storytelling is. Storytelling, there's a French saying, a pas de deux, right? A dance for two, right? And that's what storytelling is. It's a collaborative thing. Just like the comedian and the audience, it's the same thing. My story means nothing without you listening to it and responding to it and reacting to it. And sometimes we're not good dance partners, and that's okay, right? You have to understand who is the right dance partner for you. Do you need someone who's going to be able to be flexible and, and freestyle a little bit? I just lost power. We have a hurricane here right now, but I can still talk. I can still talk.
Oh my goodness.
It's all right.
Well,
so
we haven't seen that one. We haven't seen that. A hurricane is not.
It's not a snail. Yes. So listen, I'm Rain. I'm used to the hurricanes. We can get busy no matter the conditions. So yeah, I know I'm rambling, but the point is, your pet store client, it really doesn't matter how good they are or how great of people they are. And I don't mean that in a rude way, but all that matters is that they can find the people who understand how good they are and are willing to pay for that, right? And so if you don't, then it doesn't matter. Like, there's something, I'm a co-founder of a startup right now, and there's a saying in that world that's like, does not matter how good your product is if no one knows about it. Great. And if you don't understand how to communicate, no one's going to know about it.
Totally. That's true. Rain, and while I was hearing you about your journey career, I really like to ask you, how do you empower these people through the storytelling? If you can share with us like a success story that you have with a client or someone that really needed those push in their marketing strategies, and how to outreach in a more practical level and also in a more intuitive and personal level for their clients. If you can share one more story besides the one that you have shared with the Indian girl of the cupcakes, it was cupcakes or it was ice cream?
Cookies. Yeah, cookies. Yeah.
Cookies.
Yeah. What I need to tell her is like, yes, well, first I need to sample all your product and then I can really, really help you. Yeah. I mean, I have one personal brand coach that has a chronic condition and really wanted to build a community through that so that she could create some passive income because this condition is degenerative and it makes it challenging to do physical work, and so she's thinking about the future. And so she had this idea, and ultimately what was blocking her was what blocks a lot of people, which is just it's really just different forms of fear, right? But that shows itself in perfectionism. That shows itself in what's called shiny object syndrome, right? Like you jump from thing to thing, like, oh my gosh, there's this new, camera. Oh my gosh, there's this new social media platform, and it keeps you distracted. That's all procrastination, and procrastination is insecurity, right?
Yeah.
It's perfectionism is the same thing. It's all insecurity. And ultimately, it's just about changing that mindset. And so she now has 30,000 TikTok followers, and has a business where people are buying merchandise from her, they're buying coaching from her, et cetera, et cetera. On more of a company tip, I did a speech a long time ago for sailors. I'm not a sailor, but I did a speech with them and made some coaching clients from that speaking job. And there was one who was a video producer, so very similar to what I do, and I coached him through a documentary, which they were unsure of how to do it. They had an idea and a dream and a vision, but they were unsure of how to pull it off. They couldn't ultimately afford like me to make the film, which is okay. So they were going to do it themselves. So I just coached them through the process, and that film won awards for them. And now that's successfully launched a whole new business for them. They're, creating all these, sailing documentaries and videos, and now they're getting clients to do it. And the same thing is like, it's ultimately mental blocks that are ahead of people. And that's because we don't know which way to go. And we fear messing up or doing it wrong. What I have learned, and what I've learned specifically in the startup that I've done, which is the first for me in the past couple of years, is that it's all testing. We're doing research right now, and when we learn something or a mistake is made or there's negative feedback, it's like that's a learning opportunity. That means, okay, great. Now we know that's not the path. So we're closer to finding the path. It's just stepping up to the plate, as we say in baseball, right? You just have to keep swinging and swinging and swinging. And the reason is having success once is not enough data to prove that that's the path. That could be a fluke. So you have to take so many swings and test it so much that you have a large data set that you can look at and start to see the story through the data. Like, oh, 60% of the people responded when I said this or did this.
Exactly.
These types of videos get 80% retention, but when I try to do what I want to say, nobody watches it. So maybe I should start saying it like this, right? It's all testing. But when you are a passionate person or a business, and this is why I love working with individuals and small businesses, because so much of their identity, this is what it all comes down to, what I'm about to say. So much of their identity is tied up into what they're trying to achieve and accomplish, whether it's their business, their book, their social media, because they're trying to be a creator or content creator. So much of who they are is wrapped up in that. When there is feedback, negative feedback or criticisms or critiques, they take it so personally. And even before they get to that step, the fear of that criticism prohibits them from taking the step that they need to get that whole data set. If they can switch their mindset to say and stop, this is where it all starts, folks, changing the story that you're telling yourself, and just say, like, I've got to go out there and make a lot of mistakes or it's not going to happen. Think about the puzzle pieces. You've got 1,000-piece puzzle. Let's not even do that hard. 500-piece puzzle. How many times do you try to put a piece somewhere and it doesn't fit? All the time. Because you have to. Oh, that look, first of all, you see it and you think it's going to fit, right? Because you see it. That's your hypothesis. right? I believe this is going to happen. That's your assumption. So you test it, you put it there because it looks like it fits there, but oh, it's a little too wide. It doesn't fit there. That's all it is. And we don't look at it that way. We're like, oh my God, it doesn't fit. I'm an idiot. This is never going to happen. I'm a total failure and I will never be. Come on. No, it just didn't fit. So you find another one. And that's why puzzles take a long time. And that's why success in anything that we're trying to do, storytelling, social media, startups, they take a long time because you have to stay consistent and you have to make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And Rain, can you elaborate on the specific ways, or at least that storytelling can contribute in health and happiness to a person?
Storytelling is all about connection. Storytelling is the essence of human communication, but so much of what brings us happiness, health, and success is connection, human connection. If you're selling the new pen that you have to connect with another human to sell that product. You have to. Even though we look at people and customers sometimes as data, they're people too, right? So you have to be able to connect with them for that. If you're building a startup, you have to connect with people. If you're the comedian on stage, if you're the author, anything you're trying to do, if you're a leader of a team, I mean, I can go on and on and on because everything requires communication, right? Everything requires humans collaborating together. Even if you're doing something on your own, like you still have a coach, you still have a client, like you still have people, right? Even if it's not like teammates per se. So that's why they're so powerful, is because they encourage human connection. That started since the beginning of time. Like we use stories for safety and security at first, literally around a campfire, and to understand if that person that I just met in the woods is a friend or an enemy. Like we told stories. Or once they became friends, then we would be like, oh, well, if you go to that creek over there, there's some fish that you can catch, right? We're telling stories, right? Or watch out for that cliff on the other side because rocks will fall down every now and then. You could get hurt, right? That's, and it literally happened around the fire when we were the beginning of humankind. And then we started using them to build communities that we shared values with, religious communities, political communities, right? Social communities, right? Economic communities. We started building communities to still feel like that tribe and to feel safe and secure. None of that has changed. We still want to feel connected. We still want to feel seen, heard, and understood. And stories are the way to let people know that those things are happening. I see you, I hear you, I understand you.
Excellent. Rain, you provide services from the US. Is your economical or entrepreneur services footprint only the US, or do you provide something outside the US?
No, I mean, not at all. I because of social media, because of technology, the world is getting more connected. And
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, I mean, especially things on the online space, but I also just put a bid in for a speaking engagement in the fall in Amsterdam. So no, I travel all over, but also things can be done. A lot of my speeches are done from this room, but they can broadcast anywhere. So in terms of coaching and consulting, all of that can be done. In terms of, the books and things like that I have to offer, those can be read and seen, in other places. So no, I'm physically in the States, but, my podcast specifically, one of my favorite things to do is to see all the countries that people are listening in, because that makes me feel good.
Great. And how big should a company be to hire your services?
Oh, I like working with smaller companies, to be honest. I have worked with big companies, but as I said earlier, like I like working with people who are under-resourced and overwhelmed, right? Because that's where I come from. Like as an independent documentary filmmaker, shooting that film by myself, that's who I was. So I'm not typically working with Apple or Nike or Sony. I am working with, smaller companies, a lot of personal brands, a lot of creators and artists, a lot of people who they're trying to write a book, or like the sailing company who was just trying to make that documentary at first. So they don't have to be any certain size. What I also try to do and provide is a lot of different ways people can learn from me. So I think that's really important to have different tiers depending on how deep people want to go into the space, because not everybody needs to be a master storyteller. And that's not what I try to do. I try to get you to understand how you should be telling your story unlike anybody else in your space. So that pet company I'm really interested in, because what I would specifically want to do with them is help them understand how to tell a story and communicate with their customer unlike any other pet store, pet brand around, because you should have that. That should be clear. And very often it's not. But if we all four had the same amount of money and the same background, we were all documentary filmmakers, and the same money, same amount of time, same resources to go make a film about this pen or about pens, all four of those would be different. And if we had 100 people, all 100 of those films would be different. Somebody would do the history of pens. Somebody would do a personal story about how when they started writing with pens instead of pencils, everything unlocked for them, whatever. Because we all come from different backgrounds and different experiences that have shaped our unique perspective. So the pet store brand has a unique perspective on pets. And they might not be leaning into that in their messaging, but they should, because the one thing that you can have on this earth that no one else can ever have is your story.
Exactly.
You can have the same resources, the same ideas, the same tools, same money, same all of that, but nobody has your set of experiences that led you to your perspective on the world and the work that you do in it. And we don't leverage that enough. There is no other Rain Bennett in the world, and there never will be. But it's the same for all of us. But what we try to do is, oh, well, that pet store, they're doing that buy one, get one free dog leash sale. We better do something like that. We're looking at them, we get competitive. And when we get competitive, we stop being creative.
Rain, what we expect from you in the next 5 years from now?
In the next 5 years, my main priority at this point, and it's written up, there's a little paper behind me right there with my goals and focus points for this year, is the startup that I am building. I am creating a startup, which is also won't be limited to the States, by the way, where we are helping people capture their family stories. So we would be, our platform would be used to interview with professionally trained story guides, we call them interviewers, to interview your parent or your grandparent and capture their life story and then turn it into a 15 to 20 minute documentary, a film about their lives with pictures and music. And that's what we've been testing the past few months. And it's so beautiful. And the response has been incredible. Tears, like emotion, people saying they've never felt more connected, back to that word, to their parents. Hearing stories their mothers have never told them. And that's exactly why we're doing that. That company is called Heartfelt, and we will be launching in a month. So I'm very, very excited about that. The second
very soon.
Yeah, I'm excited. We've been working for a while on it. And we've made a lot of mistakes. We made big mistakes and we had to completely reset. And that could be very discouraging. But if we hadn't have done that, we may not have a company anymore. So you have to make those mistakes and you can't dwell on them and you can't be fearful of them. That's part of the process. Yes, nobody likes them, but that's part of the process, right? The second priority for me is my podcast right now, which has grown quite a bit in the past couple of years, especially last year. And so I'm really trying to double down on that. Every week we have, I do solo episodes and then I have guests, some of the best storytellers in the world. That's called the Storytelling Lab podcast, which certainly any of your listeners can listen to for free. We have incredible storytellers, filmmakers, writers, marketers, all on there, social media creators, all of that. And every week I learn something new. So I know that the audience will as well. And then screenplays. I'm writing writing my own screenplays right now, which is something I've been wanting to do for about 10 years. So,
Wow.
You have a lot on the plate. I was just about
buddy,
to ask you
and I'm
about,
trying to raise
master
kids, and
classes.
come on, somebody help me.
You mentioned about coaching and about connecting with people. So my question is more like, what is another key thing about instead of connecting and with the people that can storytelling help to the people that are listening, to the other companies?
We've kind of talked about it a little bit. One of the exercises that I've done the longest with clients is what I call finding your unique intersections. And what that does is it explores what we were just talking about, like your unique way of viewing the world and the work that you do in. And it's very simple. It's like a Venn diagram. You all know what that is? The overlapping circles
Yeah.
in a
Oh,
diagram.
okay.
Yeah. So, and then it leaves the space in the middle, right? So it's a 3-part one. And there'll be a little piece where they all overlap. And then obviously each 2 overlap on their own as well. So those 3 circles are your skills, what you're good at, better than most, your passions, what you love, what lights your heart on fire. So clearly there will be an overlap in some of those, but not all of those, right? Because I love some things that I'm not necessarily good at, and vice versa. And that's not unique to me. That's there's been plenty of people that have said that in terms of like finding your niche. Like, what do you do better than anybody else, and what could you do every day for the rest of your life? Like passions and skills. The third part that I think is most important is your experiences. Where you come from, who you come from, what unique communities you belong to that have changed and shaped the way you view the world. So that could be like your family. That could be like, I grew up on the water. Like, did that impact who I became? Absolutely. Absolutely. The type of work my parents did. I told you I was an athlete. That definitely has changed the way I view the world and the work that I do, and much more. I mean, then of course, what I've studied and all of that. But when you start to understand how your perspective and philosophy on the world has molded itself, the shape that it's taken. And see, here's the problem. We often don't ask ourselves these questions. We don't ask ourselves, why do you feel that way? We don't investigate because we're scared. Same thing. Like, we don't look into ourselves and be like, why do you feel that way? Why do blah, blah, blah. When you start to understand yourself better, you start to understand how to talk to them better. So the journey first is always in. Now, it actually might be on the outside, but the real journey is happening here, right? And this is the Odyssey, right? Like, this is Odysseus, right? Like, you go on, this is the hero's journey. You go and become transformed and then come back home. But the transformation happens here, right? Here and here.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't happen out there. You go learn things and get new skills, but it is a change in your belief. And then you come back home, and then that's when you have to live out that transformation that you had. So always go in. One of my favorite creators that's been on my show said, you find your voice by using it. And it's the same thing that we talked about with the connection to your audience. It's still testing. You're not just going to ask yourself the question one day, who am I? And get a beautifully painted picture of who you are. It takes time and practice and mistakes and the same thing. So outward or inward, it still takes mistakes. It still takes reps. It still takes time. But you have to get out there. And if you don't, neither one's going to happen.
Rain, I think we're getting to the end of the podcast, and we would love to hear some inspiring, it's been inspiring all the way.
Oh, yeah.
Some final inspiring words for Latin America.
The biggest inspiration that I can offer is that what I just said about no one in the world has your story, right? So you have to learn how to use it. But I also want people to understand that there are so many different paths to what you're trying to accomplish. There is not one way up the mountain. Sometimes people are going to take the scenic route and it takes longer. Sometimes people are more aggressive and they're going to climb the rocks that are deadly, right? And sometimes a rainstorm's going to come up and you have to wait a week before you can keep climbing again. But so often we think that just because this person went up that trail, that's the only way I can get up there. And when it's no longer available to us for a multitude of reasons, that's when we shut down and we feel like success at the top is never going to happen. So the people that I learn from echo this sentiment all the time. And I love people whose journeys have taken 20, 30 years, because that's the most impressive to me. And it's through those inspirational stories that we realize that, like, one, it's never too late. And two, there's a million different ways to get what you want to get. And we land right where we started, which is you just have to get out there and start testing. And don't marry yourself to one track. If you want to be an author and you don't get a book agent, you just give up? Or do you tell the story that you want to put out in the world, that your heart is dying to tell the world, and then throw it on your back and carry it up the mountain yourself? That's up to you, folks. That's up to you. But that's what makes the difference in someone who makes it up there and someone who doesn't.
Thank you so much, Rain, for saying yes to the podcast. Thank you for accepting my LinkedIn invite. Thank you so much. And thank you for the insights that you have been telling us throughout this lovely day. And also to our listeners, thank you so much. Rain, before we leave, please let us know how they can learn more about you and where they can find you.
Yes, my website is rainbennett.com. There are not many Rain Bennetts out there, so I promise you will find me. There's none, right? That's what I said earlier. And the Storytelling Lab podcast, that is where, if you want to become a better storyteller for no money and very quickly, the Storytelling Lab podcast will help you.